Hi guys! So today we are going to be talking about this book here, and it's written by Marcia Cameron, forwarded by Dr. Ira Steinman, and it was published in 1995, and it's 396 pages long, and I enjoyed every minute of it. So if you see my eyes going up and down, it's because I'm looking and talking to you at the same time, so I can explain the book itself. Um, it's a very vivid and very detailed book, so I'm warning you ahead of time. There is such severe abuse in this book that I would recommend talking to your therapist or psychologist first before even reading the book. So basically, Marcia is abused by her mother, who is German. And she ends up marrying a Jewish man, and she ends up having 3 children, and one is Marcia, and the other 2 are boys, which is Bobby and Jimmy. So because Marcia looks more like her father, and she is more Jewish, I guess is how the mother partakes it, she is abused so severely by this mother throughout her whole childhood. And I literally had to put the book down numerous times to go, okay, I can read this, but I have to take breaks in between because it was so intense and so vivid that it triggered my own abuse in some aspects, especially with the cult-like features and things like that, and then the German thing, because I also come from a German background, and some good things and some bad things. The nun Sister Mary spoke some fluent German, but then now like my grandmother did, so it was like there's this in-between feelings. So throughout this book, this woman goes through so much stuff. She eventually, as she gets older, tells her dad of the abuse, and he gets her out of there. But the mother has so much control over the whole family that even one of her brothers is given electroshock therapy. And the mother, once the father finds out, is given electroshock therapy. But the saddest part was the one person that she counted on during her teenage years was her father, who ended up dying in a horrific airplane accident. And with Marcia, she goes through quite a few therapists prior to meeting Ira Steinman, and it's such a long journey for her. She almost gives up numerous times. And her mother actually ended up, as she got older, you find out throughout the book that the mother kills the aunt and the grandmother, which is like, how does this woman control everybody's world? So now I'm going to read you some of the reviews that people had talked about this book, and it states here, of all the many books I have read which recounted the life stories of victims of multiple personality disorder, Broken Child is my favorite. Now keep in mind this is 1995, so they are going to kind of call it MPD. It's well written and fast-paced, hardly ever slackens as the author tells her at times very intimate story of personal hell and subsequent salvation through 5 years of intense psychotherapy. She gives a deeper and more in-depth explanation of her life and origin of her dissociative neurosis than do other authors writing their stories of MPD. This no details withheld approach to a description of the symptoms of her mental illness adds to the feeling of having been taken into the author's confidence. But it was not until I arrived at the last quarter of the book that I became convinced that the book was not a hoax. I had believed it was untrue because the recounting of torment that the author received from her psychotic mother was, to me, unbelievably exaggerated. I thought that the well-written book describes tortures which could not be true since they were unbelievably sadistic. At first it seemed to me to be a satire, an attempt to outdo the other popular MPD books. Since Cameron's encounters with her mother were more akin to a description of concentration camp hell rather than parental abuse and neglect. Marcia Cameron was singled out for the greatest abuse among her siblings. She endured many broken bones, deep cuts which left numerous scars, gross humiliations, beatings, SA torture, deprivation of water and food, bondage, being buried alive in dirt up to her neck. But enough. I believe you get the idea. It was not until she met her third psychiatrist that I became a believer. This was when she was able to begin the process of her personality's integration. As I read the harrowing experiences of the author, I felt numb and mostly horrified. The only time I cried was when she told the story of how, after the book was finished, she gave the completed manuscript to her husband to read, knowing full well that his knowledge of the sexual promiscuity of one of her personalities would probably cause him to leave her forever. It's just amazing what she's been through. And the thing is, it's all real, it's all legit. She even in the book gives Ira, her therapist, her psychologist, all her stuff, all her images and medical records, because she's so afraid because of the severe abuse that she's been through that nobody's going to believe her. So the other thing I was shocked by is that Ira Steinman, according to my records, is still alive. And he's a member of the ISPS, the APA, and Northern California Psychiatric Association. The thing with Ira, doing the research I did on him, is I found that he is actually more focused on schizophrenia, but his methods in psychotherapy do wonders with everybody. It was amazing the research I did on him and found out. So here I'm going to read another article here that a person talks about. And it says, when the author and her psychiatrist speak of regressions, they mean the assumption of the personality characteristics of her multi-egos. Her psychiatrist would probably insist that the last thing Marcia needed was further regression. Certainly not if the regressions meant that she was to assume another personality. To the contrary, a lot of time during her sessions was used to keep her from regressing in an attempt to give her insight and co-join her various personalities. I believe that an important element in her therapy was the fact that Dr. Steinman was always there for her during the sessions and even afterwards, when he always accepted her frantic telephone calls in a loving manner. Indeed, Cameron feels this caring and respectful attitude of her therapist was the key to her overcoming deep depression and gave her a reason to continue living. Remembering the abuse, the author claims, was only the first step of the road to her beginning recovery. She writes that, in a sense, she had never really forgotten the abuse, because her body had always remembered. I can so relate to that. Her nightmares also revealed her secrets. She wrote, I would have to say that I never forgot any of it. I just didn't want to remember it because it was beyond endurance. This is typical of repression, which is always on a different scale of recognition. Marcia Cameron believes that it was this lack of willingness to face the truth which caused her symptoms, and decided that her disassociation into multiple personalities were her way of keeping memories away from her co-consciousness. She felt that because of Dr. Steinman, she finally became able to process the correct emotional responses. Without him, she believes that those memories could never have been acknowledged and processed, because they were overwhelming. She became extremely grateful to him and feels that she owes him her life to his loving care and compassion. And I can really relate to this relationship because it's similar with mine. There are boundaries that I have to keep, but yet there's an openness where if there's a problem, a panic, or something wrong, or I got to go to the doctor, my therapist is always there. And that is very important. Yet she keeps a very professional stance. She keeps a very professional boundary. And the other thing I want you to keep in mind when you read this book, keep in mind it's older. So when Marcia talks about the integration of her alters, she actually kind of talks about them disappearing or kind of dying. But remember, that's how she viewed it. And as you read through more of the book, you'll find out that she still hears the little ones. She still touches the toys. So there's things that you know that she's integrated, but she still feels the littles inside her. But she keeps it at an adult stance, which is something I really enjoyed. The other issue she talks about is the issues with intimacy and what do you call that? Promiscuity, where she lingers off. And I've also experienced that in my earlier years where I had snuck out. I had done things I shouldn't have done that my husband didn't know about. And when I finally started therapy, I come out and told him the things that this altar has done and what I've done, and he was very understanding about it, knowing that I wasn't conscious at the time. So these are things that are very honest and true in this book. So last, I wanted to show you these few things here, which shows Iris Steinman's provider's follow-up, amount of time. I mean, his scores for his therapy are pretty much all 5-star. Patient loyalty, general feedback, all that. And I found an article on the Psychiatric Times here that talks about Pandora's Box and the integrative treatment of schizophrenia. You can also find, how do I put this, interviews and meetings and open talk on YouTube about Iris Steinman. So that's all I have today, guys, and I really enjoyed this book, and I really hope you check it out. Just make sure to talk to your therapist or psychiatrist first. The details in it are very horrific. I found it to be very difficult to get through, but in the end, it was definitely worth the read. So, loves. Bye.